Welcome to What's the Deal by Bluegrass Realtors, your go-to source for the latest housing trends, market insights, and industry updates from the heart of the Bluegrass region. Whether you're buying, selling, or just curious about the market, we're here to help keep you informed with all the info you need to make confident real estate decisions. On this one, we have our 2025 Bluegrass President, Todd Hyatt, here with us. And just going to take some time to kind of get to know him and how he kind of got started in real estate. Todd, thanks for joining us today.
Well, thank you.
So we're just going to kind of just jump right in. So tell us, how did you get started in real estate?
Do you really want the full story?
The whole story.
Well, to be honest, Richard, I thought I was going to be a mortician.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, my uncle owned a funeral home, and I started working at a very young age at that funeral home. So I went through college thinking that was going to be the game plan, and I'm fairly well driven and realized it was his business at that particular point in time once I graduated from college, and decided to go in a different direction. And a good friend of mine that I would go fishing with at Reelfoot Lake was president of Anderson National Bank, and he had told me on the last fishing trip we had if he'd like for me to come be a loan officer. So when I decided that the funeral business wasn't where I wanted to be, I went to work at the bank. And after I graduated from college, I knew who Lois Ann was. Lois Ann Despennet is my wife, and she's been doing this a long time. And we had some mutual friends, and she and I, she's a little older than I am, so she says she had to wait for me to grow up. But we started dating, and my father-in-law says every time he looked up, I was pulling in the driveway. So they couldn't get rid of me, and Lois Ann and I got married. I got my license in 1986, and we've been working together for 38 years. And I've worked with my mother and father-in-law for 38 years as well.
Wow, that's pretty awesome. And I know Lois Ann, I think she's at 48 years,
She's
right?
at 48.
Wow, yeah, that's a heck of a story. And then, along those lines, I know we talked before about, you guys are based out of Lawrenceburg.
We are.
And originally that was not part of the Bluegrass Realtors footprint.
Right.
So talk a little bit about how you kind of got connected to the association.
Well, we had been a part of NAR. It's hard to track that now, but Lois Ann, when she got her degree from UK, at that time it was just a 2-year degree. But one of her professors, impressed upon her the importance of being a part of the National Association of Realtors. So, when I got my license, we paid the dues, she paid the dues, and we got to a point in 1989 where, the Bluegrass Realtors, and at that time the Lexington Bluegrass Association of Realtors was something that was intriguing, and we thought, we need to make a step. So we joined. And I guess at that particular point in time, we joined, and then Birdwhistle and Perry joined. And Lois Ann and I made the decision when we were going to be a part of the association, we were going to be a part. We wanted to go to the functions, get to know the individuals that were there, because we truly were. We were kind of the country bumpkins, I guess you could say. But for those that know us anyway, when we show up somewhere, we're kind of like the Clampetts. But we made it a point to be involved. In other words, go to any functions that they had and build those relationships. Because what happened, the way the market shifted, a lot of times people weren't coming to Anderson County. Once we joined the association, then, of course, that was back during the MLS books, but,
Right.
We had our listings there, and price points were substantially different. When you cross the river, you're talking could be anywhere from $30,000 to $50,000 worth of difference in costs. So we had people coming that way. And in building that relationships, we tried to make it easy. We'd like to have every buyer, but we knew if individuals from out of Fayette County or any other of the members of the association were coming to Lawrenceburg, we didn't really care what they bought. We just wanted it to be one of our listings.
Right.
So at that particular point in time, it was kind of, it wasn't the greatest, but we had a feature sheet. We'd go take pictures and print the pictures and staple them to the feature sheet and develop a map. And if individuals would call and wanted to show one of our listings, we'd have it all mapped out, have all of the information, just tried to make it as easy as we could for them. And, it just kind of helped us build those relationships with a lot of those agents that didn't know who we were. And then they were able to understand that we did have a little bit of knowledge about, the real estate industry. So we just kind of went from there.
Yeah, I love that, and that's always that's kind of a hallmark of what we try to do as staff is, and you push this with the presidency as well, is that like we need to be easy to work with. Yep. And that doesn't matter who you are, right? It doesn't matter whether you're, helping somebody answer a question about a central lock box or helping somebody try to sell your property.
Right.
You want to be easy to work with,
right?
And that's a big hallmark of everything we do. So as far as you said, you guys got involved early on. You're going to functions and things like that. Like, at what point did you start getting involved with like committees and things like that? And what did that path look like to the presidency?
Well, I guess because of the relationships, we got to know at that time Elaine and the staff that was here, Ruth and Jeannie. And, we built those relationships. And then those individuals that were a part of the leadership at that time, we got to know them. And I can remember I was on some committees, but, now I guess because of the presidency and I'm a part of Commerce Lexington, we're pushing this regionalism.
Yes.
And one of the committees that I was involved with early on was the Leads Committee. And, Crystal was a part of that, and it was a great committee. You had Becky Murphy was the chair of that committee, Al Blevins, was a part of it, Melissa Pointer, and of course Dan and Melissa back during the Toyota days, they were doing great things. And, so I was able to get involved with a lot of people that had some ties and connections. And, it just kind of flowed from there. And then Ashley Troutner, Frankfurt came in to the board. They had their own separate association at the time. And when Frankfurt merged with Elbar, at that particular point in time, Ashley came in and became treasurer, and so there was a spot open to fill the director's seat, and they asked me if I would fill, and that's when it kind of started, which was probably in terms of the board of directors, and then leading up to wanting to be president. That probably started 14, 15 years ago, I guess. So
yeah, that's awesome. And I think that's also a good thing to kind of point out is, like even now on the board of directors these days, we have our district liaison positions, and we're always trying to make sure that we do have that representation, right? And it sounds like all the way back 14, 15 years ago, that was a hallmark of what Elaine was doing just to get started, to make sure that as we brought in these people from the outside, they had representation.
Well, and that's changed through the years. I mean, when we set up the districts, and it took a little while to get that, ask Randy.
Yeah.
Randy tried to get that. I served with Randy a couple of different times on trying to get the district set up. And, one of the goals as we have grown as an association through mergers and acquisitions and, people wanting to become a part of us, we wanted to make sure they had a voice. And I think now with the structure, it took a little time to get to that point, but we are at a point where every district does have a representative voice. And I think that's important, and that's key, because every district's different. Fayette County operates a little bit different than Lawrenceburg or Anderson County, and they operate a little bit different than Somerset. So we just kind of have to look at the whole.
Yeah. Absolutely. And just to drill in a little more on it, like even on the committee level, like when me and you and staff are sitting down and we're filling out these committees based on people sending it in, which note everybody, when it comes in the fall, send in your names. But we always try to make sure we have as much representation on every committee, at least as much as possible with the names that are given to us. So,
and it's hard because some people, they want to sell real estate.
Yes.
They don't want to be involved in the operation of the association. So, I respect that as well. But we do need those individuals that are willing to step up, because we want representation.
Exactly. And it's both. It's like I 100% agree. At a certain level, though, I mean, I mean, I would say that getting involved, at least from what I've seen on this side, helps kind of sell real estate too, because you're building relationships.
It does, right? Relationships is what it's all about.
Right.
I mean, in everything you do, really. But especially in real estate.
Yeah. I know me and you've had the discussion before, like I'm a tech guy, so I'm like the first one people would expect to be like, oh, just email me and I'll get back to you. But shaking hands, looking people in the eye, breaking bread, there's power in that.
Oh, yeah.
And that's something I know we both believe strongly in.
Right.
What about connecting at like the state and national level? What have you done there? What kind of benefits have you found from that?
Well, we kind of did the same thing. For a long time, the first couple of years, we were young. Took a while for Anna Marie to come along, so we had the time, and we would go to the state convention. And again, it's much like what we did with Elbar at the time. When we went, if you've ever watched Lois Ann, she's not going to sit still. So she's going to walk around and she's going to get to know somebody, and that's much like her dad.
Right.
No matter where we've been throughout the country, he'll find a connection at some point during the conversation. So when we would go to those meetings, we got to know people that we didn't know from far western Kentucky to far eastern Kentucky, north and south. And, we've developed a lot of strong relationships over those years. And, from a political standpoint on the national and even the state level, we have a lot of people that we are good friends with that are either representatives or, just from the political climate. And that comes a lot from her dad. But that has helped us, too, on issues that needed to be addressed for the protection of the consumer.
Right.
As we've been able to put people in contact where they need to be.
Yeah, there's so much value in that. NAR has literally a century of building relationships and advocacy.
Right.
And, RPAC is such a big driver behind that. And, anybody who's heard me talk knows that I'm a big believer in RPAC too. And but it starts with those relationships. We have the federal political coordinators, we have state political coordinators, we're even working on local political coordinators to make sure that we're maintaining those relationships. And just having someone's phone that you can pick up, and sometimes it's going to be, hey, how's your mom and stuff, and sometimes it's, hey, there's this bill that's kind of important we need to talk about.
Well, and no matter where you go, whether it's on the state level or nationally, when you sit down in those offices, one of the things that they tell you is it's important that you're there. You have to be there, and the involvement and RPAC, you look at people in the past like the Ann McDonald's, and poor old Ann, she hounded people, she pushed it, and I will say for a number of years we probably weren't as involved on the RPAC side as what we should have been. But boy, when you realize the power that we have, and with NAR. There is the advocacy is huge, and it makes a difference, and it protects our business. Look, just over the past 5 years, what happened?
Absolutely.
When COVID hit, we were able to work, and that was purely because of the advocacy. So it makes a big difference.
Yeah, another one of my favorites is a lot of times what RPAC stops from happening is equally as important. And one of my favorites is like flood insurance, right?
Right.
Like every time, their government shutdown is looming, that's a piece in the chessboard. And NAR is constantly fighting like, no, guys, seriously, if this lapses even for a single day, you're affecting literally every single pending transaction in the country. And also, if it goes away, there's no guarantee we're getting it back.
Right.
So that kind of stuff that, yes, there's great things RPAC does, but there's also a lot of silly things that it prevents.
Right.
So that's great stuff. All right, let's get off advocacy. You had mentioned that going across the river, you'd have a $50,000 drop in value, but how has the market changed in previous years? I mean, is that still about the same, or is it more or less?
No, it has shifted. When gas prices went up, and at that particular point in time when you had the $30,000 to $50,000 price point difference, gas prices weren't as high either.
Right.
So, things did shift a lot, when, you look at Don Ball. Don Ball was a dear friend of of my father-in-law and a friend of ours, he and Myra, and when they kind of moved into the Versailles market, that kind of shifted things a little bit. But it's changed, but yet there are people you can still get more ground where we are, and you can still get things a little bit cheaper. But it's really from a price perspective now, it's very similar. Maybe a little bit cheaper depending on what you're looking for. But inventory levels has affected everybody.
Right.
So that's the big change. I mean, back years ago, if you go back to the late 80s, early 90s, there was a lot of new construction. And there's just not a lot of new construction anywhere.
Right.
Not only in our area, but Fayette County. I mean, we're short. So it makes it tough.
Yeah, NAR calls it the lost decade.
Yeah.
And actually it's longer than a decade at this point. I think we're pushing on 15 or 20 years.
Probably, you're talking 2008 to 2010 when the pendulum swung. And from a financing perspective, we had a lot of builders that, we probably represented 10, 12 builders or more at the time. And some of those guys might build 3 or 4 houses a year, 5 houses a year. But when it changed and they kind of had to check all the boxes and they couldn't check the boxes, then the lenders couldn't make them the construction loans, and those guys had to find work.
Right.
So we lost a lot of that trade. And so you've got bricklayers, electricians. The electricians and the plumbers are okay, but there were a lot of people that got out of the business at that particular point in time, and it's going to be hard to get that back.
It's hard to make a pencil out.
Yeah.
It really is. Yeah. I know we had David O'Neill in earlier that in March, and he said that it's about 500 homes a month is all we've built in Fayette County for I think since 2008 or 2009, or not a month, a year, 500 homes a year, and it's not really coming back, and it's nowhere near the levels we saw previous 2008.
Well, we went when you look from about 2010 to about 2016, we had a development going in Lawrenceburg, and we didn't sell one lot.
Oof.
And there were 3 other developments that went under. So that kind of tells you, what was going on.
Yeah.
And it's all relative. I guess through the years, the one thing you realize, the magnitude might be a little bit different between Lawrenceburg and Lexington. But what's going on here usually is going on throughout the region.
Yeah,
it's just
exactly.
at different levels.
Yes, I mean, 38 years in the business, you get a different perspective on things. You're dealing with the hills and the valleys, and even going as far as things like the settlement or other things over the years that have been like the death bringers of the industry.
Yeah.
What's that perspective like of having been in it so long and riding those hills and valleys?
Well, you have to be patient. It's not going to be this way forever. And I think as I look at what's going on right now, you kind of look at some of the things you've learned through the years, and the settlement happened, and we're having to adapt, and you've got to adapt. But I think sometimes attitude has a whole lot to do with it, and I'm a fairly positive person. I don't like to dwell on the negative. And then something that my college football coach said, Kevin Donnelly at Georgetown, every time we'd get ready to go out on the field, he'd say, worry about what you can control. And, some of that we can't control. I mean, everybody, we should have, could have, would have, whatever. There were a whole lot of working pieces in that a lot of people don't know. So it is what it is, but worry about what we can control.
Yes.
We can control ourselves. We can control our actions and how we respond now, and I think that's more important. I think you're going to work yourself through it. There's going to be peaks, there's going to be valleys, but the sun's going to come up tomorrow.
Exactly.
That's for sure.
Yes. Yeah. One of my favorite quotes is that old Charles Swindoll quote about the life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react to it.
That's exactly right.
And it's a lot longer than that and a lot better if anybody wants to go look that up.
Yeah.
But so yeah, just kind of wrap it up here. So what keeps you motivated daily? Like, you guys do a lot. You own multiple businesses. You're volunteering everywhere. You have a lot going on. What keeps you motivated to keep it going?
Well, I kind of thought about that question, and I guess I I'm kind of goal oriented. So I like to set the goals and try and achieve certain things. But, as I kind of look at it, we love what we're doing, and I think that's a difference. And, I'm fortunate right now. We've got, my daughter's in it. But, she can say, I guess we're kind of cut from a little bit of a different cloth because we eat, sleep, and, we wake up thinking about real estate. We go to bed thinking about real estate, and whether it's on the development side or, a building you want to build. And, we love it. We go on vacations. That's what we do. She's like, I'm not going to do that. I'm like, that's okay. That's okay. But we enjoy it. So, the motivation for us, my father-in-law, and I go back to him a lot because he's had a big impact on my life. My dad had a big impact on my life, and he's been gone for 11 years now. And so Dave is kind of like my second father, and smartest guy I've ever been around. And you just can't outthink him. He was always looking ahead. And, it gets a little tough to try and keep all those balls, and I can't juggle them as much as I did, but we truly enjoy what we're doing. And, they say if you enjoy what you're doing, it's not like you're working a day in your life. And, although the stress and the gray hair will show that may not necessarily be the case, it's been great to us. Real estate's been wonderful for us, and it's been a great profession to be a part of.
It truly is an amazing industry. I'm the same. I've had the jobs where I would start having that Monday blues on Sunday night. I've been there, done that, got the mental scars to prove it. But I don't feel that way at all working in the real estate industry. It's so fascinating every single day to wake up and help facilitate the market that it helps consumers through the most difficult transaction of their lives.
Yeah.
It's really rewarding.
Yeah, it is. And it's, the relationships, again, that's huge because it's, it's not only the business relationships. There's things that happen. Circle of life, we all have to deal with a lot of different things. But, I can tell you from Lois Ann and my perspective, the relationships that we built weren't just business relationships, because when things happen to you personally, those people are still there for you.
Yes.
And that's huge. And there's wonderful people that are a part of this organization, not only on the leadership side, but our staff. I mean, everybody just always takes care of you.
Absolutely.
It's just, it's an amazing organization, and, we're very fortunate.
I just, man, the realtor family is something else, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. It really is.
Coming from Florida, whenever we got hit by Hurricane Michael, it was the realtor organization that stepped up.
Right.
I mean, between like NAR and the state association, both waived dues for all of our members. The local association, we're doing a pretty good amount. We got a bunch of money from Realtor Relief Foundation. I think when we sat down and totaled it up, it was something like $4 million of benefit that was going to a little bitty 100,000 person county in Florida.
Right.
And then just the number of realtors from all over who showed up like boots on the ground to help as well. And I'm sure a lot of this happened with the tornadoes in Kentucky as well. I'm not telling anybody anything new here. The way the realtor family steps up is really something special.
Yeah. Look at what's happened in Kentucky over the past few years.
Yeah.
And they've been a huge part of it.
Yeah.
From the tornadoes to the flooding. It's a great organization to be a part of, for sure.
Absolutely. So any parting words of wisdom? Any goals for this year as president? Anything like that to touch on?
Well, just, keep the faith.
Yeah.
It's, we will adjust. We will adapt, and we have. There's going to be some things we have to deal with, but, we're resilient, and, like I said, the sun's going to come up tomorrow.
That's awesome. So thanks, Todd. Thanks for being on the podcast with us this month. Like I said, everybody keep an eye out for the future episodes of this. We're going to be putting them out about once a month, usually right at the beginning of the month. And, again, David O'Neill, Dr. Clark, Jessica Louds, Jared Florence, got a great lineup for you. And tune in and listen. That wraps up this episode of What's the Deal? We'll see you next time for more tips and updates from your trusted real estate source. Don't forget, subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an update and catch us on social media on all the major platforms. If you have any real estate questions, feel free to reach out, and thanks for listening.